Hello everybody.
Hello.
We're back again with number 6 in the series now.
Is it?
Yeah, it's been going on for a while.
The new creation.
Yeah, we're at the new creation. Remember where we've come from? Creation, the fall, Israel, Jesus, and we finally, the summary, the end of the summary of the Bible,
Sorry,
new
that's
creation. 5. I know, but we're in number 6 because we had an introduction week.
Oh.
So this is week 6.
Okay.
And yeah, we're really coming up to our final part. So all the threads that we've talked about through all these different parts of the Bible are now coming together. That's how it's meant to be. If this is one overarching story, then they're all going to come together.
Can't wait.
So let's see. So the Jewish expectation that we've talked a lot about did include resurrection, because they understood, and it's particularly from the book of Daniel, that there'll be a day when all of the righteous are raised to life again, and everything is renewed. The whole of creation is renewed. Somehow Isaiah talks about a new heavens and earth coming together. So there was this expectation. But as in most of the story that we've talked about, there's a twist, a surprise. Because resurrection does happen, but it's not the end of time. It's not the end of history. The first resurrection happens with Jesus. And so what we find is the Bible starts to talk about new creation has started. That's why we've left the resurrection of Jesus to this part. Okay?
So the Jews would have a real problem getting their heads around it, because they're waiting for the resurrection.
Yeah. I mean, most of us have a few difficulties about the resurrection, I guess, and getting our heads around it. But for the Jew particularly, because they were expecting this great day of resurrection, all the righteous would come back to life. And for them, suddenly one resurrection has happened in the middle of history. The history hasn't finished, the end of time hasn't come, and yet there's been this resurrection.
They say, no, it's not meant to be like this.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Okay, no, I have never understood that before.
Okay, well, so we're going to talk today about the resurrection of Jesus. This is the start of new creation. And really it's why we're doing this series at all. I mean, you think about it, there's been hundreds of different worldviews, hundreds of different people groups over the years, and they've all had their own stories, their own gods, their own ways of seeing the world. And why do we pick this one that goes back to this guy Abraham, who was some character from the Middle East thousands and thousands of years ago? There were many other worldviews around from that time of how the world was created, what the world's all about, what's God like, what's his purposes for the world. Lots of different ways of seeing the world, and yet we have decided to take this one. Why?
Because it's the truth.
Well,
the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah, we would say because there is a resurrection that has kind of proved all this. This is why we're talking about it now, as opposed to any other worldview, is because Jesus, who was killed, who was crucified, but he came back to life. And that sets it apart from everything else. So the resurrection is crucial to everything, really, to our faith. It's the fundamental part of our faith to say this sets it apart as different from everything else. And so we've got to recognise the resurrection is such a key to everything, to hold everything together. And I want to just explore a little bit more about this resurrection, because it has so many implications to what's happening in the world now and what will happen in the future. Okay? So let's just talk about the resurrection. Have you ever considered what Jesus' body was like after resurrection? You get these kind of strange accounts, don't you, in the Gospels?
Could walk through walls.
Yeah. So there was this. It was like he was a spirit in some senses. He was spiritual in terms of being able to walk through walls.
But he was normal as well.
But he was physical as well. Yeah.
Because those guys on the road to Emmaus just thought he was some bloke.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So there's a sense in which he was unrecognised or could hide himself. So Mary didn't recognise him. Those people on the road to Emmaus didn't recognise him, and yet he was very recognisable. So when he appeared and wanted people to recognise him, they did recognise him, and actually they saw, this is Jesus. Look, he's got the wound in his side. He's got holes in his hands and his feet. They held him. He was physical. He could eat. He was cooking for them, and he ate with them. So what I'm trying to say is this: the resurrection of body of Jesus was physical and spiritual together in the same body. It was like heaven and earth had finally been joined together. This is the story that we've been talking about right the way back, even in the Garden of Eden and the creation there, where God and man lived together. Heaven and earth were in the same dimension.
In the temple,
yeah, that's right. God and man together. And in Jesus' resurrection body, we see the finished article. We see what it was meant to be like when heaven and earth would be joined. And that's a crucial thing, because that's what ultimately we're going to be like. So the Bible talks about when we see him, we will be like him. We'll be changed.
We can fly.
I don't know how we're going to be transported around.
I just can't wait for that. I'm just going to love it.
But we won't have the kind of restrictions of the physical dimensions. Yeah, we'll certainly be able to, transport, go here and there in different dimensions. I don't know how it will work. But what I do know is that we will have a body like his.
Go through walls, say yoo-hoo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you don't have to knock on the door anymore. So it's a fascinating thought that our bodies will be made like his. That the perishable will be clothed with imperishable. And not just us. But then, Paul in Romans 8 talks about that creation itself is waiting in eager anticipation for the sons of God to be revealed. In other words, for us to have our full stature as sons of God with our redeemed bodies. And creation is waiting for that, so that it too can kind of come into its full liberation, its full freedom that was always meant to happen, where heaven and earth was reunited. That's the future. So the resurrection of Jesus is a massive topic, and to really understand what happened to his body and what he now represents as the new creation, the time when God is going to renew everything. There'll be a restoration, a renewal of everything, and it's going to be based on that body, on the body of Jesus. So it's really helpful for us to understand this. So we've got the resurrection and then the ascension, okay, which sometimes we don't talk so much about, but again, a really important part of the story. Jesus is on a hillside with numerous disciples. We're not really sure how many, but quite a few, but potentially 500. That's when Paul talks to the Corinthians about he was seen at one time by 500. It may well have been that point. And it says that he was taken from their view. Luke talks about these clouds coming and covering him, which I'm not sure if it's a direct reference, but looking back into the book of Daniel, and I think we've talked about this before, Daniel chapter 7, it talks about one like the Son of Man. Do you remember that? Which is a reference to Jesus. One like the Son of Man, coming on the clouds, approaching the Ancient of Days. In other words, God the Father. And being given authority and power, and all the nations of the earth worshipped him. He was given a kingdom that would never pass away. And I think when Luke talks about these clouds covering him, he's hinting at saying this is that moment that Daniel's talking about, where the Son of Man is now approaching the Ancient of Days and being given this kingdom. This is his, I don't know, it's like his great coronation of coming into rule in the heavenly realms. This man-God combination is now being given all authority and rule. As he said to his disciples, all authority is given to me. He goes and sits at the right hand of the Father. So this is the moment that Daniel was prophesying about. He's coming into his kingdom. He's taking up his rule. So we're a very significant time here in the story as Jesus comes to take his rule. Okay? And so we get this interesting phase now, because we've got this resurrection in the middle of history, and the new creation has started, but it's not fulfilled yet. We haven't seen the whole of creation renewed as yet. So we've got this time of new creation started, and then somehow new creation is growing in the middle of the old creation. So what I mean is this: when Paul describes someone coming into the truth of Jesus and being born again, he says it like this. He says, if anyone is in Christ, new creation. That's 2 Corinthians 5. If anyone is in Christ, new creation. In other words, the new creation has come to you. Not in its fullness, but it started. Something has happened to you that has brought you into this new creation that Jesus started. And somehow, this new creation going on in the old creation is how Jesus is extending his rule. Okay, so
I was taught it as it's now and not yet.
It's a good phrase.
Is that what you mean?
Exactly. New creation is here, it's now.
And it's not quite yet
and
as
it's
well.
not yet. Yeah.
But it's a little glimpse of it.
Yes, exactly. It's a glimpse. It's Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, he will reign, talking about Jesus, he will reign until all his enemies are placed under his feet. So in effect, what we're saying is, yes, Jesus is reigning now, but there are enemies who don't submit to him. And slowly but surely he's bringing them under his feet, under his rule. So I don't know if there's an English kind of folklore tale about Robin Hood, and I don't know if this will translate, but there's the King of England that goes off to fight some battles in a foreign country, and during that time his brother, so it's King Richard that went off, and during that time Prince John usurps his throne, takes it over, and in it starts to build his rule around himself for selfish reasons, and all the kind of great justice and goodness of King Richard is taken away. And there's one called Robin Hood who stands up for the values of King Richard and says, no, we believe in justice, we believe in the freedom of all the people. And so he fights for that against the regime of Prince John, waiting one day for the king to return. And so you get a little glimpse. That's a little bit like now and not yet. It's like the kingdom is here, it's now. Robin Hood is bringing the values of King Richard.
Yeah.
And living them out, justice and freedom. And yet, in a world ruled by Prince John, which is completely opposite, oppression and injustice. So it's not a great picture. It's a little insight, but it's not perfect because actually Jesus' reign is much bigger than that. That even though there is bad stuff going on, it's not all under his feet as yet. He still makes everything work together for his good.
That's the thing we can't replicate in any story.
Yeah, it's impossible. So he is working out everything for the good of those who love him, even at the moment, as the ruler. And so things aren't perfect, things don't work out perfectly, and yet he is still at work in those things to bring good out of them, which is amazing, really, if you think about it. That's the rule of King Jesus at the moment. So, and in the midst, and in the meantime, we get to pray like Jesus taught us: "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." That's where we're living at the moment. For now, but not yet. All centred around this resurrection of Jesus. Okay, so
very, very cool.
It is. It's wonderful, isn't it? And it's so exciting how all these things come together in this one person, Jesus. He's the hero of the story. So the discussion question for this session is this: in what way does the resurrection and the ascension of Jesus fulfill the biblical story? Okay, that's the one to discuss this week, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The ascension as well?
Yes, the resurrection and ascension. Speak to you tomorrow. Bye now.
Bye.